The session is mainly to introduce a new regional initiative that is being launched by FAO called the Regional Water Scarcity Initiative Program for the MENA region. And it's as a collaborative multi-partner effort to address water-related challenges in the region. The initiative highlights aspects related to data technologies, emphasizing their role in informed decision-making and enhancing collaboration across sectors. There'll be presentations which will include geospatial insights. There will be a NENA Evapotranspiration Regional Network that is in function that will be presented here that provides standardized field data measurements on evapotranspiration, as well as a presentation on innovative tools for enhanced water management. Additionally, after the presentations, it will be followed by a panel discussion where we will have panelists joining us from various different institutions from all over the world. That will be emphasizing on the role of data technologies and capacity building for managing natural resource space. So what we're trying to do here is firstly to provide a brief introductory presentation on the FAO Regional Water Scarcity Initiative Program, showcasing that it's a collaborative effort between multiple partners such as IMI, ICBA, ICARDA, UNICEF, and who else am I forgetting? ESQA. So it's a regional partnership that will be functional in 10 MENA regional countries, and you will get to hear more about it from my colleague. Also, we'll be demonstrating the role of the geospatial technologies, remote sensing, cloud-based platform in bridging the data gaps. So my colleague will be presenting that. And I'll be presenting the NENA Evapotranspiration Network, and my colleague from IMI, Yusuf, will come and showcase the innovative data solution, giving an example from Morocco of the Sousmasa water accounting dashboard that IMI has developed recently to illustrate how data-driven tools enable informed decision-making in water and agriculture management. So without taking too much of your time, I would like to introduce our first presenter. Here you are. It's my good friend, Dr. Muhammad Abdullah. He is a program implementation support and geospatial expert at the FAO in Cairo office, the regional office for the NENA region. He brings about 20 years of experience in geospatial information science, capacity development, and project management. He has also served at the American University of Cairo and the ESRI, ESRI, Northeast Africa. Dr. Abdullah actively contributes to the implementation of the Regional Water Scarcity Initiative, and that's what I've known him for several years now. And his focus is on leveraging geospatial technology for sustainable development in collaboration with UN agencies, international organizations, and national partners. Mohammed, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Vinay. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for your presence here at the technical session here on the geospatial insights, geospatial insights for sustainable agriculture and water resources management. So my presentation here will be very brief. I'll be briefing about the Water Scarcity Initiative program with the main focus on data gaps and capacity development. Then I will be presenting few geospatial applications related to water and agriculture. And I will be ending with relating how Earth observation and geospatial information work for the different SDGs. So basically, the Regional Water Scarcity Initiative is a collaborative platform that was established in 2013, where 17 partners signed a partnership pledge indicating that they are willing to collaborate and together on water scarcity related issues in the NENA region. Those are the countries, those are the partners who have collaborated. Few of them collaborated with us for the development of the Regional Water Scarcity Initiative Program. So in 2023 and 2024, we've been working on developing a promising and very ambitious water scarcity initiative program that will be operational in 9 countries in the region. You know that, of course, that the NENA region is the world's most water scarce region in the world, and water-related issues is priority to this region. I have to highlight here that we work very closely with the League of Arab States. So we basically support the high-level joint technical committee, which is a technical committee that is joint between the water and agriculture sectors. And we support this high-level joint technical committee. From this committee, we come up with the common challenges that are facing countries of the region, and we work on them. So basically, the Regional Water Scarcity Initiative Program has 3 pillars. The first is on agricultural water governance. The second is resilience of food systems and water services to climate change. And the third is on knowledge building and dissemination. We've developed this ambitious program together with UNESCO, UNICEF, ICARDA, AMI, and ICPA. So we are 6 partners working on implementing this program. So the donors or the resource partners supporting the program are mainly right now Sweden, and there are other prospective donors that we are also willing to contribute to this program. So the name implies that it's only water related, but if you look at the themes under those 3 components of the program, we have water accounting and water productivity, we have groundwater governance, water allocation, non-conventional water, water energy food nexus, sustainable land management, food and loss waste, saline environments opportunities, climate change, drought awareness, knowledge sharing, and capacity development. I'll be only here during this session focusing on one aspect of the capacity development. So I will be talking about capacity development for the sake of using geospatial technology for addressing data gaps and supporting decision-making in water and agriculture sector. And I have to highlight here the reason for raising this, because data gaps was one of the main challenges that has been highlighted by the high-level joint technical committee. This high-level joint technical committee has senior officials from the ministries of water and the ministries of agriculture in the region, and they highlighted this as one of the challenging issues, the data gaps, in addition, of course, to other issues related to water allocation, the use of non-conventional water. So today I'll be talking about capacity development for this reason, because we are among this program, we've designed, we plan to design a comprehensive program on the use of geospatial technologies for addressing the issue of data gaps. Of course, capacity development is cross-cutting, so there is other capacity development themes or topics that are covered throughout the program, but here I'll be focusing on geospatial technology. Well, when it comes to geospatial data analysis, there are 2 modalities in general. Before presenting the different themes or the different topics that I'll be talking about. So either there is a traditional workflow where the users, they download the satellite images themselves, and then they use their own PCs or their own workstations for the sake of analysis of the data. And there is another one that is coming as a trend right now, which is, I won't say for the past 10 years, there has been an ever-rising demand for cloud computing and the big data paradigm. So where the data are stored on the cloud and the analysis is done there, and then only the users receive the results of the analysis without having to bear the burden of the storage and the maintenance of the hardware or the storage capacities of the servers. So let's begin with the first application. Here is the first one, which is related to precipitation trends. So for here, this is an example for Algeria, where we're using here a data set that's called CHIRPS. And the baseline that we are developing here is on year 2010 till 2014. So this data set, which is a long-term average annual precipitation from 2000 that covers 15 years, has been generated through loading all the data sets from 2010 till 2024. And then we get an average. So we can say that this is a long-term average, or we can say that this is a baseline that we can use in order to extract information or make more informed decisions based on information derived from these data sets. And it's worth mentioning here then that this has been produced using Google Earth Engine. And in order to produce just what you see right now here, we had to process around 1,070 images or data sets or layers in order to produce this baseline information for just the duration of 15 years. The data set extends much beyond that, but for the sake of the demonstration here, this is a data set that has been produced for just around 1,070 data sets. So for the sake of knowing more about the country of interest, for example, if I select, we can select certain regions, and then we can see how for the areas of interest, how was the trend of the precipitation of the past 15 years. So this is a simple annual an annual chart that shows how the precipitation develops over the past 15 years for these three regions. And you can see here that there is a trend. And if we focus more, you'll find that there is a declining trend for precipitation fall in those three areas in Algeria. So it's informative when it comes to water scarcity in the region. Then through remote sensing, we can derive information that supports decision making based on evidence. Okay, so this is one example. I'll tell you how we can use this baseline later on. Another example is drought monitoring. So using remote sensing datasets, we can derive modeling. Of course, we can derive information about precipitation, vegetation health, soil moisture, evaporation, and we can use those in order to infer whether there is a potential drought in a certain region or not. So I'll give one example. We do this using remote sensing data for anomaly calculation. So anomaly is basically, very simply, is deviation from normal conditions. So if I have a baseline, I can compare an observed value for a certain, for example, period versus the long-term conditions and compare whether there is a deviation or not. So for my demonstration, I'll be presenting deviation from normal conditions for precipitation and for vegetation health. I'll begin with vegetation health. So for example, this is in Tunisia, North Tunisia. So based on remote sensing, we can derive a vegetation index that's called normalized difference vegetation index, which is an indicator for the healthiness of the vegetation and the density of the vegetation. So throughout the whole years, we can bring information, and then we can derive this long-term condition, which represents the vegetation condition. So this is the baseline. And then for 2020, this is the observed condition. And when I compare the observed condition with the long-term condition, I can see whether there is difference, whether there is big deviation or below normal conditions. So if it is below normal conditions, then there might be potential issues related to drought. So we can highlight areas that might be experiencing drought because of inferring from this vegetation health deviation this issue. This is another example looking at deviation when it comes to precipitation fall. So this is a long-term also annual precipitation that is based on CHIRPS, but this time it is for 40 years for Iraq. So this is the baseline. And then I'll be comparing this with the 2021 precipitation over Iraq. So this is the 2021 precipitation over Iraq for the annual precipitation. And this is the deviation from the long term. So simply we subtract one from the other, and then we see where the deviations is. And then you can superimpose this on the different districts that are there in Iraq. So we can see here in the middle and the south of Iraq that there is potential sites that are suffering from deviation. And then we can not only produce beautiful maps, but we can also extract information related to whether there is above average or below average for certain areas in Iraq, whether it's experience above average or below average precipitation. I was presenting this in one of the conferences, and then there was a colleague from IOM, from the International Organization of Migration in Iraq, and she was presenting another presentation that has to do with the displacement from central and southern Iraq because of water scarcity and drought. And she saw my presentation, I saw hers, and then she asked me, where do you got your information from? I told her from satellite images, and I asked her where she got her information from, and she told me from field measurements. We came at the southern Iraq, and we made surveys, and then we compared what we got, and then we found that there was a lot of alignment between what she brought on ground versus what I got from the satellite. And when it comes to water supply issues, reduced rainfall was the main reason for these displacement in southern and central Iraq. So this gives an example for how the remote sensing data sets can provide decision making when it has to do with when it has to do with decision making. There is another application related to monitoring water consumption, what we call evapotranspiration. More and more platforms are becoming there. More and more data sets on remote sensing is becoming there. So including, for example, the FAO Vapor website platform. So this data set comes from the Vapor website. This is an evapotranspiration data set for the NENA region, and this one is only focusing on monthly data set focusing on Syria. So you can see that we can infer and we can see how water consumption is in certain areas in Syria. I'll be focusing more comparing water consumption versus biomass production. So this is also the same area in Syria, and I'm highlighting here an area of almost 40,000 hectares of agricultural land here in Syria. And then we'll see how the water consumption developed from 2009 till 2022. So if we look at the trend, we'll find that there has been a decline since there has been the uprising in Syria until 2018, and then there was a flip, and then become rising on the other one. So when it comes to water biomass production, which is dry matter that is produced by the vegetation over time, you'll see that there is alignment between the evapotranspiration and the biomass production for the same area over the same period of time. So this is also one example of monitoring. One of the examples that we usually do in remote sensing is crop mapping. So crop mapping, this is Egypt, this is Kafr Sheikh, and this is an area in Kafr Sheikh. So we use machine learning for the sake of deriving crop maps out of remote sensing. So for example, this area of interest, we have different types of crops that we want to map where these different types of crops are. And we use here Google Earth Engine, which is an online platform as well. So we go to the field. Of course, this is an NDVI map. That we use in order to select where the fields, how the surveying team will be going on ground, collecting information about what is there on ground. So we go into the ground, we survey data sets, so we bring information from the field for the sake of the classification, the training, and the validation of the algorithm that we will be using in order to generate crop mapping from using the remote sensing algorithm. So we use those data sets in order to develop the crop map, and we can validate the results of the crop mapping itself And we can also calculate percentages, and we can calculate the areas of the different crops in this region. And all this, when it comes, this can be done either using the traditional method of downloading the data sets and computing using own resources, or can be developed online. When it is developed and when it is analyzed online using cloud platforms, it's much more easier than traditional way of developing crop maps. Still, we need to bring data from the field in order to map and survey the things there. When it comes to vegetation cover change, also remote sensing can help us monitoring change in vegetation cover. And I'm bringing two examples here, one from Saudi Arabia and one from Egypt. So this is an NDVI. I'll be focusing here on Al Jawf area. And you can find here in 2016, I'm focusing on Al Jawf areas. So in 2016, you see how the vegetation is in 2016. And when looking at 2021, you can find that the pattern has changed. So if you want to look at the difference between the vegetation cover in 2016 versus 2021, we can map this change. So if it is red, then there is a decrease in 2021 versus 2016. And if it is green, then there is an increase. And we can roughly calculate the areas whether there is an increase or a decrease in certain areas. Even if we want to look at the history, or we want to look at the trend of whether, when comparing from 2016, for example, and 2021, I don't know exactly when agriculture started or where agriculture ended in a certain spot. So using also analysis, we can see here that for this specific area or for this specific area, you'll find that there was vegetation until that stopped in 2019. Okay, and then you can find that there is almost none when it comes to any indications related to greenery in the region. This is another example from Egypt. We all know where the Delta region is. This is the Delta region in 1984. This is a vegetation index showing the coverage of the vegetation in 1984. And this is how vegetation looked like in 2021 for the Nile Delta region. And this is how the vegetation looks like when it comes to an NDVI. And then when we look at the difference between 1984 and 2021, you can see here that because of urbanization, informal settlements on agricultural land, the red spots here highlights areas that shows where agricultural areas has been lost due to urbanization, but at the same time, they also show those bright green areas where agriculture expansion extended beyond the Nile Delta region. So this is how things developed specifically for the Cairo region, and you can see that there is a vast area that has been lost due to urbanization in those areas. The final thing that I'll be talking about is related to land degradation because of wildfires. So this is Algeria. So this is Bijaya region. This is how Bijaya looked like in 2022, in year 2020, before a fire incident. And then after a fire incident, you can see that there is a difference between how it looked like before and after a fire incident. And then you can see here that this is a difference between the NDVI in 2020 versus 2021. You can find that those brownish areas indicate that there is a decrease or loss in vegetation versus an increase or increase in vegetation in those bright green areas. And then we can classify whether there is low severity or high severity when it comes to how those areas were affected by the fire. And we can even calculate how many hectares were affected by the fire, whether they are high severity, the high severity or moderate to high severity affected by wildfires in those areas. So those are a few examples of what can be done using remote sensing. There are other things that could be done for the remote sensing. So this is based on a publication by the European Space Agency. Those are the different goals, and those are the indicators that can be the targets and the indicators that can benefit from the use of remote sensing and geospatial data. It's worth mentioning that we are also here at FAO, that we have our own geospatial platforms. And I'm giving a few examples. One of them is Earth Map. One of them is Vapor, where most of the data sets I used for the analysis for the demonstration. I brought it from Vapor, and I did my analysis. We have the FAO Agroinformatics platform, and we have our CPAL, which is the System for Earth Observation Data Analysis, data access processing and analysis for land monitoring, for the sake of land degradation and for the sake of crop mapping. So these are all important applications that are widely available, free of charge, that anybody can use and can make use of. I thank you for your time, and sorry if I took much of more than what I had to do. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for your attention. I'll be introducing our second speaker. Our second speaker for this technical session is Dr. Vinay Nangia. He is the research program leader for soil water agronomy at ICARDA, an adjunct faculty member at Texas A&M University at the United States, and a visiting professor at the Tottori University in Japan. He holds a PhD in water resources management and 2 master degrees, one on biosystems and agricultural engineering, and the other is on geographic information systems from the University of Minnesota in the United States. Dr. Nangia is an agricultural hydrologist with extensive experience, leads research on water use efficiency assessments, crop production function analysis, irrigation and drainage performance diagnosis, and the evaluation of water conservation options at ICARDA. Dr. Nangia, the floor is yours, and we thank you so much for your time, and please.
Thank you, Mohammed. So I'll be presenting a regional network we have developed in partnership with FAO in this regional water scarcity initiative project. So this is a network which involves national partners from 6 different countries in the NENA region. We call it MENA region. FAO calls it the NENA region, Near East and North Africa. So it's just an example of how we have joined forces, because interesting thing is that MENA region is most water scarce, yet we don't have a standardized, measured, gold standard evapotranspiration data available for this part of the world. Everybody uses equations, everybody uses remote sensing, but nobody really knows what is the right value. Everybody's approximating and just assuming that it's the right value. So that was the main motivation and the genesis for this project, was to come up with an open access, widely available data set for everybody to access, to make sure they're using the right values when they're making their water-related decisions. So like I've been telling, there are so many remote sensing products, and increasingly the resolution is improving, the frequency is improving, yet we don't know which one is right. We just assume all of them are right. And if they disagree, we don't know which one is the right one to take. So that was one of the reasons why we wanted to do that, is to compare measured data with different remote sensing product, including the Vapor product by FAO, to see which one most closely matches with the measured data for different locations, for different crops, for different elevations, and make sure that people were using the right remote sensing product. And that's something surprising, that this region being most water scarce, where we are talking about 80–90% of the fresh water going for agriculture, yet we don't have a good handle on the numbers. And like the saying goes, if you don't measure it, you cannot manage it. So if you are not making this number available to anybody, how are you going to make informed decisions? So So this was a weak point that we wanted to work on. And secondly, we wanted to work on having a standardized methodology that all the countries, all the people are using for collecting data, for quality check, for cleaning, so that what you're producing is interoperable. It's comparable by different places and different locations. And we wanted to introduce a standardized methodology. The other thing that we wanted to do was to build awareness and capacity of the national system, so that when the project ends, this effort continues and they continue sharing this data openly, widely, because then they will see value in that. So for example, if there is a person wanting to grow wheat in Bekaa Valley versus Jordan Valley versus Tunisia versus, say, Egypt, different elevations, different soils, different sources of water, rain-fed, irrigated, high altitude, below sea level. How does the Kc value change? How does the growing season differ? How much is the evapotranspiration that you get for different places? All these unknowns we were trying to answer by having this kind of a network of data sets. So that was the objective, to build a common understanding and methodology for actual evapotranspiration measurement in the field, and then compare it with the remote sensing to check the accuracy. And then this can be available for various different applications. People can have their own Kc value. People can have done their water accounting, crop modeling. There's so many different applications people can come up with if this gold standard data is actually available to them. So these are the 6 places that we have been working in. And Palestine got added quite late in the project, so we have very limited data for Palestine. But we did not actually go and provide the scientific equipment. We tried to leverage what these countries already had and tried to upgrade the system. So for example, in Morocco, we already had a place where there was eddy covariance flux tower already there. Soil moisture deficit measurement using the TDR system existed there. And similarly for other locations, if you go to Egypt, we had the energy balance method already available. If you go to Lebanon, we had the lysimeter system already available. Jordan also, we had the lysimeter system available and the soil moisture deficit. Now, one of the difficulties with using flux tower or energy balance system is that it's very expensive. It's almost $35,000 to $50,000 to purchase this system. All the sensors have to be calibrated very often. So it's a very sensitive and very expensive piece of equipment. So one of the project partners was University of Cordoba. And what they have done is try to come up with a very simple, inexpensive ET system called the Cordoba station. That's what they call themselves, at the Cordoba ET station. What they have done is they have used openly available hardware from Amazon, and they have tried to come up with the sensors. And this is a system that costs less than $5,000, but it's very academic in nature. It's still at the university level. So they became our partner to see, when we are collecting using very sophisticated equipment versus using their devices, how do the two compare in terms of reliability of data, accuracy of data, and even how continuous is the data? Because ours is like wind resistant and waterproof and dust resistant, whereas they have tried to put together a system in their laboratory by soldering wires themselves. So the durability was also quite questionable for the Cordova station. So it was an academic exercise from the university side, that is there value for this, and how accurate and how close does it come to the professional scientific equipment that is available. And you can see all these sites are growing different cropping system. Some have wheat, maize, barley, sorghum, onions. All kinds of places are having either one growing season per year or 2 growing seasons per year, depending on what kind of water source do they have. So this is just to tell you what happened during the course of 6 seasons that we have been monitoring this sites for. So let's take the example of Egypt. It started with winter wheat in 2019. Then it moved to summer maize, then winter wheat, then they moved to rice, then wheat again, and then maize again. And then you have Lebanon, where they're trying to grow potatoes and faba bean. And then you have Morocco that is trying to grow beetroot. So you see, there are all the places with different kinds of crops. So this also generates a wealth of knowledge, that you have different crops growing. So you get ET values and you can generate Kc values for various different crops that are growing in this part of the world. And the other thing we tried to do was to standardize the methodology, because we really wanted all the countries to use the same method for data reporting. So what we have is 3 levels of data. The raw data that we receive is the L1 data, which is the most raw data that is coming in, which is at half hourly interval. Every 30 minutes, we get evapotranspiration data from every site. And this is without any cleaning, without any gap filling. Whatever is measured. And this is just for academic reasons, just to see what is the actual measured value. And then we move L1 data to L2 data in our research labs. What we are trying to do is do some gap filling by interpolation, but only for small periods, a few hours, a half a day, not very long kind of a gap filling. So this is the gap filled data. And the purpose is that if somebody wants to use sub-daily data for calibration validation of hydrologic model, crop modeling purposes, so you can use the L2 data. The L3 data that we have is on a daily basis, because there are several models that ask for data on a daily time step. So what we do is combine the half-hourly values, the gap-filled values, to have a daily value. But if the gaps are too long, we don't try to fill it. We just leave it. So if the gap is like, and this project started during the COVID period, when if the solar panel breaks down, the battery breaks down, or the SIM cards needs recharge, nobody could step out to do anything about it. So we were having these kind of issues, and we did not try to fill gaps which were too big, and we just leave it as -8888, meaning this data is garbage, do not consider it. But if you want daily data for remote sensing validation, this was the L3 level. Now for every site, we had to also collect the metadata. What crop, what variety, what agronomic practices, how much was the yield, how much was the LAI, everything is made available to whoever wants to use. So we are not just giving evapotranspiration data, we are giving all the metadata that went with it for the crop that was planted and how did the crop growth cycle progress. So this is just to tell you how complete the data is. So you have the Cordoba ET station by University of Cordoba, and the ETO self is the method that the country is using, energy balance or flux tower or soil moisture deficit or the lysimeter. And you see that the two are quite closely matching. And when you don't see one of the two showing, that means the Cordoba station broke down at that period because it needed some maintenance. Sometimes rodents would come and chew on the wires. Sometimes the wind would topple the sensors. All kinds of issues were being faced with the Cordoba ET station. And you can see sometimes there is a big gap and it needed recalibration as well. So this is how the data compared for ET naught. This is not ET actual, this is ET naught. And you can see more or less we got good agreement between the two devices, because it's mostly based on the weather data, right? It's so if you have the weather related sensors, ET naught is easy to calculate, but this is ET actual. And here you can see there is somewhat disagreement happening between the two methods of ET measurement. And you can see again, some places, one of the two devices stops working, but mostly it is generating a wealth of knowledge, at least for the eddy covariance flux towers or the energy balance method or for the lysimeter method. And we have all the data sets available now. This is for all the hydrometeorological data that is also collected so that you can have the whole water balance. So how much was the precipitation? How much was the irrigation? How much was the volumetric soil moisture content? How much was the relative humidity? So we collected everything for all the sites, for all the growing seasons, and for 6 growing seasons, it is made available at 30-minute time interval. So this is just to tell you the data completeness. So these are all the parameters that we are measuring. Not every site has everything. So depending on, does it have a Cordoba station? What is a self method? And then what is it the energy balance or the eddy covariance or the soil moisture deficit? How much was the precipitation? How much was the ambient air temperature? All different parameters according to the site. What was the instrumentation available? You can see how much complete data set we get for all the countries. And this is just to tell you what are these parameters and what are the units that we used for measuring these. So this is just to give you a snapshot of the completeness of the data. You can see that the Cordoba station, sometimes it reaches 80–90% of the times that it was functional. But for example, in Egypt, it hardly functioned for 30% of the time. But the self method is close to 90 to 100%. So it's quite a complete data set that we have made available for ET naught as well as for ET actual. And these are the different methods: the Cordoba method, the lysimeter method, energy balance, eddy covariance, and the soil moisture deficit. And some places have multiple methods. So if you look at Morocco, it has energy balance also, it has Cordoba also, it has flux tower, as well as the soil moisture deficit method. So some sites had one method, some sites had multiple methods. So that way you could compare them all to see how closely do they match with each other. In addition to making this data set available, we did a lot of capacity building. So what we have done is conducted a webinar series with the world's top renowned scientists in the field of evapotranspiration, whether they were from California or they were from England or from Australia. We had a series of webinars, and the recordings were made available to anybody who wishes to watch these webinars. And each time a foreigner would give a presentation, it would be followed by a national partner making a presentation of how their data is showing. We also have a co-learning platform, an open access dashboard. Anybody can go visualize this data, look at the data, compare data for different seasons, different crops, different locations. So this dashboard is also functional. Palestine was added later, so the data became available a little later. But now using this, people are validating their remote sensing products, they're doing crop modeling, they're doing water productivity assessment, and so many other applications at present. And in this next phase of the water scarcity initiative, we are planning to expand this network. And even in Saudi Arabia, we have a flux tower, which captures the evapotranspiration data for the date palm plantations. And it's in partnership with Estidama, and we are trying to do that. Again, we didn't have a gold standard available for this part of the world, so we tried to do that. There is one in UAE, one in Bahrain, and we are trying to fill that data gap as well for this part of the world. So this is the website. If you want to go, this is where our dashboard is. All the webinar recordings are, training material is. Anybody who's interested can visit here. And we keep updating this with new information. So when the next phase of water scarcity initiative starts, we will reactivate and add additional data sets as this time progresses. So thank you so much, Mohammed. And with that, I'll stop talking.
So thank you, Vinay, so much for the informative presentation. I now give the floor to Dr. Yusuf. Before giving him the floor, let me introduce him myself, please. So Dr. Yusuf is EME's country representative for Egypt, and he's the regional representative for the Middle East and North Africa, with extensive experiences in sustainability and resilience across water and agricultural chains in North Africa, West Africa, and Southern Europe. He worked as a professor and researcher at Mohammed VI Polytechnic University in Morocco, focusing on climate change impacts on agro-hydrological systems, climate smart water and crop systems, as well as innovative solutions for sustainable agriculture. We expect from him today to present to us also an innovative tool that EME has developed. So Dr. Yusuf, the floor is yours. If you can, if you would like us, we can share the presentation from here. Otherwise, you can present. You can share it from your side.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed. Assalamu alaikum, hi everyone. Yes, I would love if you can share the presentation and manage it at your end, please. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So yeah, while waiting for the presentation, I would like to thank FAO and thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for making this technical side event happen. And it's always a pleasure to be with you and with ICARDA and the other members of the Water Scarcity Initiative family. So yeah, I will continue within the same track. We've seen interesting innovations from our colleagues, FAO and also ICARDA, innovations that are serving the spirits and the objectives of the Water Scarcity Initiative. in the Near Eastern North Africa region. And now I will take you through another innovation, or a combination of innovations that were developed by UMI, the International Water Management Institute, in collaboration with its partners. So it's about a dashboard of water accounts to help the decision making on water allocation, but also on agriculture resilience, which are key topics for water scarcity initiative. So here, this is just to tell you, or to refresh our minds about the situation of water scarcity in the NENA or MENA region. So most of the countries are in the water scarcity situation, with agriculture being the largest user, but also this agriculture sector is supposed to address a lot of questions regarding food security, but also providing labor, etc. So a lot of resilience and sustainability questions need to be addressed by the both systems, water, but also agri-food systems. In the next slide, we will see that to achieve water system transformation, we need to work toward over many dimensions, as you can see in the chart at your right hand side, and these dimensions are available, are there with different extents across these countries. And this is one of the, let's say, originalities of the water scarcity initiative, since a big number of countries are considered, but as mentioned by my colleague and friend, Dr. Muhammad Abdullah, the interventions are different, with great cross learnings across countries. But here I will focus on the transformation in water governance. As I mentioned previously, water needs to sustain the very critical and strategic agricultural sector and other systems, of course, like ecosystems and biodiversity. And this should go hand in hand with the increase of the productivity of each unit of water, but also of land. So these are the two things that AMI, in collaboration with its partners, try to think about and to provide some solutions. In the next slide, I will show you the region where this exercise happened 2 or 3 years ago. So it's in Morocco, in a very strategic watershed called Souss Massa. So in this watershed, which is falling under the arid, semi-arid climatic context, it's there where we have Agadir, very touristical area with a lot of course of demand from the water system, coming from the tourism sector, but also coming from the agricultural sector. And next slide, please. So speaking of the agricultural demand, so this region is the most advanced growing area in Morocco. Most of the exports and the intensive modern agriculture is happening there. So you can see these figures that give an idea about how important agriculture oriented to export predominantly in this region. So obviously most of agriculture is irrigated there. A lot of vegetables, greenhouses, citrus, berries, and of course a big irrigation demand, bringing a lot of pressure on the water resources and water system in this watershed. In the next slide, we will see the translation of this pressure on the water system. At your left-hand side, you can see the water balance. It's a little bit old, but we still have the same pressure. So the deficit is annual. At that time, it was something like 300 million cubic meter. Probably we have less recently because of one of the transformational interventions of the government. I will come to it later on. But the pressure and the stress on the water system, surface water, but also groundwater is there. At your right-hand side, you can see the water allocation per capita in Souss Massa compared to Morocco. Morocco is obviously falling in the water stress situation with something like 600 cubic meter per habitant per year, but this allocation is even smaller compared to the rest of Morocco. So you can see that really big questions that need to be addressed by the water decision makers when it comes to preserving water, but also making the right decisions in terms of allocating the right amount of water to each sector, tourism, urban, but also agriculture. That is very, very important from economic, social, and also environmental perspective. In the next slide, we will see the developments and research objective that we picked with our partners, which are mainly Ministry of Water and Equipment and Water, represented by the Watershed Agency of this Watershed Agency of Souss-Massa, but also Ministry of Agriculture. So the question that we placed there was to know the water use and availability in the recent past, to make learnings, but using very accurate and comprehensive approaches, but also projecting the situation in the future under the business as usual scenarios, but also under some scenarios of interventions. In the next slide, I will present the tool that was the foundation of this analysis and this development exercise, which is Water Accounting Plus. It's a model that is distributed, so in each pixel we can understand the main parameters of the basic water balance, but in very distributed and high resolution way. Evapotranspiration, the storage or infiltration, but also how much water or how much outflow we have from the system. And the system here is the watershed. In the next slide, I will show again more details about how it is presented from modeling perspective. So I will not go into detail, but I would like to say that this model is giving really good and interesting capacity to understand, to analyze and study water and hydrology in the region. Why? Because as we know, and as the colleagues mentioned previously, we have really big data gap in the region, ground data or recorded data, which is of course limiting the capacity and the performance of the water models. And the Water Accounting Plus, which is a property of IMI, FAO and HA, dealt with some variations across the institutions. But in general, it is giving a good modeling capacity, including in the context where data is lacking. And here we make use of remote sensing data. And we've seen in the first presentation that one of the most reliable remote sensing databases available for water and agriculture analysis is WAPOR, the FAO database. So this model gives us also possibility to use extensively remote sensing while conserving the accuracy and the good agreements with the hydrological and water phenomena on the ground. Of course, a lot of calibration needs to be done using the available water on the ground before to exploit the insights coming from the model. In the next slide, I will just show the pattern of climate in the Souss-Massa watershed in the center of Morocco. It's a arid, semi-arid climate with a lot of difficulties for most of the models, hydrologic models that can be applied here. So the winter yes, the winter is the most rainfall period, but with a lot of variability on year-to-year basis. In the next slide, I will show another effort that the colleagues, IMI colleagues, in collaboration with the Watershed Agency of Souss-Massa did to prepare the model, which is the land use map. So the land use map is a key input for the Water Accounting Plus, because actually all the calculations are done using the land use classes. And here we cluster the land use classes into a few groups that are relevant to the decision makers when it comes to water allocation and increasing the productivity of water and land. And I will go through the examples later on. The next slide, I'm showing the distribution of meteorological stations across the watershed. This is important because this helps us to find the best remote sensing tools, remote sensing datasets that are relevant and giving good accuracy in the context of the watershed. So this analysis is also one of the preliminary steps before to run water accounting plus on a watershed. In the next slide, here I'm talking about the discussion that we had with the government, with the Ministry of Equipment and Water, the Watershed Agency of SUSMESA, about the future, the projections that we need to consider. So, as I said, we analyzed the current situation or the recent past to understand in very high accuracy what's happened in terms of water allocation, water use, water productivity over the whole watershed. And here we are talking about significant watershed. It's 27,000 cubic kilometer. With, of course, mountains, forests, agriculture. We had something like 15,000 hectares of greenhouses. We had also citrus and a lot of field crops. So the plan was to consider 2030 and 2050 for the future projections of all the parameters related to water use, water allocation, and water and land productivity. And in the next slide, I'm showing one of the outputs of this analysis, which are the water accounts. And this is only for 1 year, which is 2014. So as you can see, if you can start from your left-hand side, you can see P, Q, etc. So these are the inflows. So these are the sources of water to the system, to the watershed. And then going toward the right-hand side, you can see the steps and the stages of water use and allocation, controlled but also uncontrolled water allocation over the within the watershed. And in the green box in the top of this graphic representation, you can see the examples of land use that were considered, which are protected land use. So protected land use for in this exercise were the greenhouses. So you can have now the amount of water that was used during 2014 in the protected land use class. And then we have utilized land use, we have modified land use. So utilized land use, it's mainly forests and pasture land, and modified land use are referring to the field crop and rainfed areas. And then going to the right-hand side, you can see the outflow, which is the amount of water that is going out of the watershed. You can see evapotranspiration as a significant parameter, but also how much water is going to the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, which is 7.4 here in this year. So as you can see, a very comprehensive understanding of the use and allocation and also productivity of water and land. In this slide, you can see some of the parameters that were jointly picked with the Ministry of Water to track some of the water uses, but also availability and types of water in terms of quality across the year, annual, but also in wet and dry season. And here we are talking about really very specific parts of the year or the season when it comes to water management, as it is an arid area, and during the dry season, big challenging questions are there when it comes to sustainably allocating water. So now they have really more accurate understanding of these key parameters to make decisions, but also to understand the priorities to pick in the times of scarcity. In the next slide, yes, you can go to the next slide, please. It is the situation in the future. So the same parameters of high interest to the Water Ministry and also Ministry of Agriculture, but under the future scenarios. So here, this is what's going to happen for this very important parameters: storage change, exploitable water, utilizable water, non-recoverable water, which is amount of water that's reached very high pollution rate, very difficult to be treated, so they can understand what's going to happen in the future under the non-action, of course, scenario. In the next slide, I'm showing the next step, which is the dashboard. So after finishing up the modeling exercise, understanding the situation of water in the current situation, but also in the future, the discussion with the decision makers was about how to present these important, but in some situations complicated parameters in more friendly way, user-friendly way. And when we talk about user-friendly way, here we talk about water governance, where in many situations, Ministry of Water is not the only one taking decisions. So we have also in some, for example, in extreme scarcity situations, we have kind of security or emergency task force where even Ministry of Interior is interfering, and also Ministry of Agriculture, Finance, etc. So they are not water specialists. So we need to present these insights for decision, for co-decision and joint planning in a user-friendly way. So we came up with this dynamic dashboard, given the main information that need to be taken into consideration while taking decisions on planning and governance of water for agriculture, but also for other sectors. So this is the first snapshot. In the next slide, you can see other information, like, for example, the water availability per capita per year or even per month, the environment water stress, so the environmental demand is there. In the next slide, you can see other parameters about the water balance and the evolution of the water balance in more easy way to understand across the year, but also over the basin from the rainfall or and other sources of water, if any, till the end or the exits. And by the way, after finishing the exercise, and I mentioned something about a big intervention by the government, which is the desalination plant. So because of the big water deficit, the government invested in really flagship desalination plant for drinking water, but also for to irrigate something like 10,000 hectares of intensive agriculture in this area. In this slide, we can see also other parameters like the climate impact on water balance and also on the hydrological key hydrological parameters. In the next slide, we can see many other climate, but also water change analysis to be taken into consideration, like rainfall, evapotranspiration, and many other change analysis compared to the baseline, and what's going to happen in the future compared to the baseline. So this is my last slide, just to say key takeaways from this exercise that will be capitalized on in the Water Scarcity Initiative by EMI and its partners. So yes, bridging or working on the water scarcities goes hands in hand with considering the resilience of agriculture and agri-food system because of the amount of water consumed, but also for the importance of agriculture in the Middle East and North Africa region. And tools, we've seen good examples in the previous two presentations, and in this one, we've seen how remote sensing with modeling, consultation, and also with user-friendly way of visualization can help in taking jointly agreed decision in terms of planning. And of course, we need always to take into consideration the scalability of these solutions to other contexts, other situations. And this is one of the strong points about Water Scarcity Initiative working over a big area. I think this was my last slide. Yes, so these are the partners or the financial partners in this exercise, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. for sake of saving time, we'll keep the questions for later, but let's quickly move into the panel discussion. We have a very rich panel comprised of engineer Ahmed Al-Naimi, who's the General Manager of Technology and Digital Transformation Department at the National Center for Vegetative Cover Development and Combating Desertification in Saudi Arabia. He holds a master's degree in geospatial information applications from Canada. He has extensive experience in environmental management. He leverages advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence, remote sensing, and GIS to develop sustainable solutions. He has represented Saudi Arabia in prominent international forums, including the UN GGIM and the OGC, and has played a pivotal role in national projects focusing on driving sustainability and optimizing project outcome for different environmental aspects. If you could have a seat here, sir. Our second panelist is Dr. Emmanuel Cheo, who serves as Associate Academic Officer in the United Nations University UNUVIE campus in Bonn, where he leads research on water within the framework of the water, energy, food nexus, with a particular focus on climate change. His expertise spans groundwater management, climate action, and fostering community resilience through innovative, climate-smart, and business-oriented solutions. Dr. Cheo, if you could take a seat here, please. He has a PhD in environmental and resource management from Brandenburg University of Technology in Germany, and where he also earned his bachelor's and master's degrees. So pleasure to have you. And our third panelist, Ahmed Al-Mehdi, I think is having some difficulties connecting, so we will move on without him. But I'll give the floor to my colleague Mohammed to pose the questions to the panelists.
Thank you so much, Vinay, and thank you very much for our esteemed panelists. So I'll begin with my question to Dr. Ahmed Al-Naimi with regard to the National Center for Vegetation Cover and Combating Desertification mandate, which is related to sustainably managing rangelands, forests, and national parks, addressing land degradation, restoring vegetation, and combating desertification in contribution to the achievement of Saudi Arabia strategic goals that are outlined in the Vision 2030. So my question to you, sir, is on how the NCVC currently utilize and plan to enhance its data and information technology capacities, including geospatial technologies, which you master very well, in order to support the NCVC mandate with regard to its mandate and decision-making process. So if you can brief us on this, please, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for organizing this meeting and very rich presentations. And I wish that with the experience of other countries, we can share knowledge and information together. So this is actually a big question. It's not a small one. So just let me answer this question by first introducing the mandates of NCVC so we can understand how we develop the technology at the center. So NCVC is mandated to take care of rangeland and managing grazing. We have forest management. Also, we have national parks. We have now more than 500 national parks in Saudi Arabia. Also, the biodiversity and all the what we call the bank seedlings and other functions from invasive trees and rainwater harvesting and anything related to that. In addition to what's mandated recently to the center, which is the plantation program, which is part of the Saudi Green Initiative of planting 10 billion trees. So As you know, all that Saudi Arabia is a big country. It's like 2 million square kilometers, mostly rangeland, very small part in Saudi considered as forest. But we divided forest into mountain forest. We have the Wadi forest or valley forest. And we have the coastal forest, which is mangrove and else. So when we consider it as this, it will be a big forest. Actually, when we calculated primarily the forest in Saudi Arabia, it is more than the size of Lebanon, which is considered as a huge area. So when we started, we thought of how we can manage and monitor this huge area. So we developed a system which is the hexagon index system. We call it Terra codes or Terra index of different levels. We put the level 0 as 1 hectare. So we divided all Saudi Arabia into hexagons of 1 hectare. And in every hexagon, there will be like many hexagons until we reach to the 0.5 hexagon with the unique ID of each. So we can reach to the single tree because, you know, tree counts in Saudi Arabia. So the 1 tree in Saudi Arabia is it's like 10 trees in other country because of the scarcity of trees. So we set up this index and we now try to monitor and try to collect data. So our workflow at the technology department starts from data collection, data management, analysis, and applications. So between these these four workflows, there will be sub workflow regarding data quality, quality control, quality assurance, and other technical things. So we started with the data collection. So we have so many technologies using now in this field. So we have the field data collection, which is we are using drones and the multispectral cameras with drones with the lidar just to monitor the plantation program. Of course, at the beginning with the NCVC work, because it's a country or national initiative. So every government entity will be like planting the same thing. So in order to monitor what NCVC is doing is by flying drone every month on the project, so we can monitor later on. We are using satellite imagery, of course, of different levels. We are using airborne also imagery. And we developed so many forms regarding the field collection because we would like to populate the database right away, so we don't need to wait along. So we developed so many forms regarding soil collection and the vegetation collection and water as well. So we have different forms, electronic forms, of course. Also, regarding the technology, we are using IoT we are putting sensors for land degradation, for the sand movement, and we have the soil measuring devices, so we can calculate also the elements, the main elements of the soil, so we can have a frequent data on the soil. Um, this is like regarding the data collection. Managing the data, it's different technology. So we are using an open source database. So that will allow us to use so many technologies to populate this database. Um, uh, we are we are using different technologies just to manage the data in a way to just move in and move out of the data in a good speed. Regarding the analysis and the applications, so now technology reaches so advanced technologies. Fortunately, now the technology will allow us to speed things up in order to compute, calculate. We are using GPUs to process a lot of huge data. This is like in brief what we are doing.
What you've just mentioned is amazing, Dr. Ahmed, and you've made it easy for us to move to the second question when talking about the Internet of Things. So this is very informative. I'll go to our esteemed colleague from the United Nations University, who is also an expert in IoT. So Dr. Emmanuel Cheu, as an expert in designing and implementing smart irrigation systems that leverage Internet of Things and sensory technology for real-time water allocation and efficiency. Could you share with us your experience deploying those systems in developing countries facing water scarcity? And maybe you can also brief us on what are the key challenges you encountered during implementation and how these challenges were addressed. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the question, and also thank you for the invitation. And it's really a pleasure to be here with you all. And also, it has been a very rich discussion. I really enjoyed the different presentation and also the talk of the previous co-panelists. Maybe just to start a little bit to talk about the United Nations University and what we do at the university. So the United Nations University, it's a think tank, and it's also considered as the academic arm of the UN system. And we also act as a bridge between national university and the UN system. So my program, which is called Pan-African Cooperation and Education Technology, is hosted at the Vice Rectorate. And under this program, we have 3 key pillars. One pillar which focuses on water, energy, food nexus. The second pillar that looks at innovation and digitalization, and the last pillar that looks at focus more on institutional capacity building. Here, we support parties of the convention in the implementation of their NDC or their national adaptation plan, but also support them in designing and developing joint projects together for implementation, because a large part of our work is being done in the frame of a project. And to respond to your question, I mean, taking into consideration that we are an academic institution, we are a university, we do conduct research and build capacity. So a large part of our work is done within this domain, whereby we create a living lab, close to reality situations on the ground for universities or for students to conduct research using these facilities. mostly in the framework of this nexus of water energy food nexus, because the goal, a large part of the goal is to make maximum use of this so-called productive use of energy. How do you maximize the outcome of energy through solar, or to build resilience in community? So that is more or less how we bring in, or so for us, digitalization, Internet of Things is a kind of a cross-cutting tool that we use in doing our work. I can give an example of a project that we are currently implementing in Mali and Gambia. So a large part of our work has been focused in the West Africa mostly, because part of the goal also is how do we use such technology, and also in combination with the web nexus in greening the Sahel, but also bringing in the third or the fourth component of the nexus, which is health, taking into consideration that the temperature are too high. How do we make it easier for farmers not to stay too long outside using Internet of Things through automatic irrigation? So in Mali and Gambia, we are installing 4 demonstrators in the context of agrophotovoltaic, but bringing in this aspect of automatic irrigation. The whole goal is for students to be able to work with this kind of real context facilities, so as to generate real data which they can use or use as a kind of a learning environment to upscale in their different communities. So in Mali, but also what we try to do in our context is also to accompany it with the kind of a business model, so as to ensure long-term sustainability. And in the case of the Gambia, we collaborate with a private farm, where this private farm intend to use the energy for drying mangoes, but also the IoT system for irrigating different crops like strawberries, cabbage, tomatoes, so as to increase income. So that is one context where we create this kind of a living lab or demonstrators in collaboration with universities in this country. Another interesting case study that I would like to share is a case study in Niger, where here it's more focused on solar irrigation and automatic solar irrigation in the context of also in a living lab, but strong collaboration with a tech hub, because from our experience also, a lot of these innovations are taking place out of the university setting, and it's happening a lot in tech hub. So we try to combine university tech hub in the implementation of our project, so that youths are engaged. Because one thing we also notice is that the agricultural sector is dominated by older people. So we also want to make the sector attractive. So that is why we bring this element of digitalization, Internet of Things, so that youths could be involved in this sector. So these are just examples. And then maybe key challenges which we have experienced so far. There are many of them, but I will just list 2. One is the aspect of the tools. They don't have the necessary tool. For example, in developing a sensor, they need to ship it to China to print it on the circuit board before it comes back, before they complete the process of developing it. They don't have also open platform for the visualization of their data or the management of their data or data collection. I had an example of a youth where the platform that he was using, he was paying $2 per month, even though it's small, but for him, that's a lot of money. So another challenge is the finance. So that is more or less on the challenge part. In terms of costs, what we are doing in most of our projects also, we promote a lot South-South collaboration to learn from, share experience from different countries. And one of the countries that we collaborate a lot where there is a similarities in terms of their experience and the challenges similar to the context in West Africa is India. So Well, it depends on what you talk about affordability, but at the government level, collaborating with other southern countries, it's affordable in terms of price of this equipment. But when you go at the lower scale, at the farmer level, this might be challenging. So costs, the technology, these are just some few challenges. So I think I will stop here now. There are many other challenges like capacity building, even though you have companies located in countries like Niger or Mali, they still rely on a lot on their partners in Europe to jointly develop technologies together. So that is more or less my experience in Western Africa. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Emmanuel, and I thank you so much, Dr. Ahmed, for your presence. This was very informative. Well, it went very fast, this side event. We thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Vinay. Thank you, Dr. Youssef. I thank you so much for your efforts and for your contribution to this technical session. And I now close the session for the following technical session, and hopefully